Hello, my name is Robert Love, and today we're going to be talking about the Delphi Debugger. This is my fourth take at trying to get this right, so hopefully you're with us today. The debugger has many features that make our lives easier as a developer, and as such, I want to spend a lot of time, not in slides, because we could talk about the points of what it is. Instead, we're just going to switch over to the IDE and actually use the debugger and show how you can use various features. Obviously, every debugger needs to have the ability to set a breakpoint. That can be done quite quickly. I use F5. You can also click in this range. Once we get running, if you'll notice, this all switched into a different layout. The Project Explorer is gone. How'd that all happen? Well, let's just close out of this. Up here at this top, you can configure any layout you want. So you can say, hey, let's go find the debug layout, which is the default. And I find that when I've been doing these recordings for this presentation, that there's just not enough visible real estate on the small resolution that we have to do these at. So I like to unpin this. The other thing is I have 3 monitors, and so because of that, things that should be known is you can float these individual windows, and you can set them on individual monitors, and when you save the desktop, they will always be where you expect them. And that's the way I run when I am at work. And one of the other things we have here is I've set up one called New Debug Layout, and all you have to do is hit the set this green button there, and you're able to select which layout you want. So you can get the debug environment set up the way you want it. So let's run this little application here. And all this application does is it takes a population and generates a bunch of random data. And then we can hit populate, and it'll populate these random data. And if you'll notice, you put your mouse over things, and you can see that we can get the values. And I see this a lot in developers, is that we sit and walk around and do this, and then we get lost because we lose some of the whole picture. One thing that we should always be aware of is the local variables are always right here, so we can see what's going on. So in this case I have li and emp, and they're here. But also local to this is the self, because it is a form, which is the reference to that, and then we have the variable that was passed in, sender, there. I can at any time highlight a section of text and drag it over into my watch window. And so this allows me to set up quick watches on things. I can always, of course, edit that and say that no, I didn't want full name, I wanted age, and then I can get the age here. When I'm in the watch window, certain things call like you need to have a watch window on a result of a function, say the length of something, or you want to do that. You'll need to select this allow side effects so that we can have it execute that code, knowing that it's not going to cause a problem in your application if it does. Say that code raised a show message dialog, simple case. We could have a lot of problems if every time the watch evaluated, you got a show message dialog popping up in your application. It would cause quite a bit of confusion. We can also choose to allow different ways we want to look at the data. By default, most of the time you're just going to need default, but you can also choose, hey, I want a hexadecimal representation of this so I can see that age in hex, but you all have options here. We are going to now move to stepping through this code. So let's, as you can see, I'm stopped, and as I can, you can use the mouse buttons up here. If you'll notice F8 and F7, and that's, I think, all I've ever used. I've lost track of ever using the hot buttons up here anymore. So you press F8 to step over and F7 to step into. So let's step into this, and you'll see we're now into the get age, and I wanted to point out we're now in the call stack, and you'll see that we were in a button click and now we're inside get age. This allows us to see where we've come from to get here. But another little known fact is we can put a breakpoint in the call stack, and when we hit run, we will stop when that breakpoint is exited, and now we are back to that line of code. So as we're stepping back out of the call stack and we want to get to that specific spot, we can quickly use those breakpoints in the call stack for us. Let's and let's just start over. We can also come in here and see these the breakpoint. We can unclick them to turn them off, or we can make them conditional on different things. But let's find a real-world example here. I have in this, if I hit 4 and I hit generate, I'm going to get an invalid argument to date and code. And this is going to obviously be an exception that we have. If we hit break here, it's going to show us the line of code that the exception occurred on. And this quite often puts me right in the middle of the VCL, but the reality is the call stack here is your friend. You can see that it was raised by encode date, and you can also come up here and see generate. And so if I come up to the generate, I can have emp birthday, and I can see the encode date, and I could put a breakpoint here, and I can hit generate again. And here I can put my mouse over each one of these if I wanted to, or I can just drag each one of these in to evaluate, and I say, well, those don't look wrong, and I could continue to press this over and over and over again. But I know that there's something here. We're getting some invalid data. So let's go out and say, hey, well, using that, we can hit breakpoint properties, and we can use something called a condition, and we could say, hey, let's break when the day is greater than, say, 30. Or actually, let's put 29, because then we'll catch more possibilities. Now, when we run, we see the day is 34. So we actually caught the condition from this. Obviously, if you look up a couple lines, it's because I'm picking some random values for the date. So I'm just going to change this real quick to 29. And we'll run this again. And now if I hit generate, I get everything that I need. Now I can come in here and hit average age, and I can see that the average age is 51 with this data that I have. But if I was to go in here and change this to, say, 50 and generate, and if I hit this count, we'll see that there was really 50, and I hit average age, I get an access violation. One thing is I see a lot of developers worry about an access violation, but an access violation is one of the easiest to find most of the time, and that is because you're reading or writing from something that's not set. So the key is to set up your watches or look at everything that's there in a very quick and easy way. So now I've got this break, and I look at that get age, and it's years between now and F birthday. And you read through that code and you're like, how could that generate an access violation? And you sit there and think, what's going on? If I put over F birthday my mouse, it doesn't work. What's going on? I can drag F birthday over here and it says inaccessible value. And I see developers quite quickly say the debugger is broken. Well, the debugger's not broken. F birthday is really inaccessible. If we now look over here and see self equals nil. That is where F birthday exists. Is in the if we were to look at this class right here, tPerson, F birthday is just a member of tPerson, and we are calling that. So we're now calling get age on a person that doesn't exist. So going back to our call stack, we can go to the average age, which would be the next one up. We could come through and say, how can we get to this point? It's there. Now, the bug is because I've hard-coded this from 0 to 99, and we're only dealing with a record element of 50. But let's assume that it's a far more complex problem than that. So if we hit the breakpoint properties here, one of my favorite tricks is to turn the breakpoint off and log the expression of I. And then, if I can reproduce the bug again, and I just hit continue, I can look down here in the event log, and you will see that there's right here this breakpoint expression I, and it's in a really bad font here, but you'll see I is 50. So I know that it got to 50 and then died. And so I can, this saves me from pressing F7, F8, 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 or whatever, all the way through a big long loop. Run the loop once if it's possible. Sometimes they're even bigger than that, and we have other techniques for those. But one option here is to then put a condition of saying I equals 50. Now, going back to the application, I can hit average age yet again. Hit, oh, hold on, where was I? Did I hit breakpoint properties? I didn't check break. So you've got to turn that back on. Otherwise it's just conditionally going through. So we got to turn the break back on. Change this to 50. Generate and hit average age. Now that we have that, we can see that data equals nil. We can use the data I equals nil. And we can see that those are literally inaccessible values. So in this case, we need to change the code to low of data equals the high of the data. So if we change this back down to 50, it's now no longer erroring out with that specific problem. There's a few things that we also need to do to make sure that our applications are set up correctly for debugging. So when we're in the project manager over here, we can right click on it and go to the options. We can also do it from the project's options menu. And we're going to get the setup here. Let's talk a little bit about what each of these things mean. If you use assert in your code, which basically is a nice way of saying if this condition is not mazed, raise an exception. Well, you can turn those off if you want. I never recommend doing that even in production. Personally, I like to keep them on with my release builds as well. But assertions have the ability to be off and on. To get your debugging information to even start, we need to have debug information true. We also turn on these local symbols, and the symbol reference information I've just leave as the default there with the debug configuration. The debug DCUs. What this means is the ability, if you saw when we had the encode date problem, we actually found ourselves inside the VCL. This is very, very useful. My recommendation is to always turn it on. By default, it is off. And the reason I recommend that you turn it on is because you don't find yourself sitting inside the CPU view with the error because it didn't have a line of code. And you sit there and wonder, whoa, what happened now? I at least get a line of code. I can see it. It may not be one of my own lines of code, but I quickly can then use the call stack to see how did I get into this line. And it's a very useful tool. And that's something that I would recommend turning on as well. If you're doing any other types of debugging, say you're dealing with remote debugging, you'll need to turn on the remote debug symbols unless you're using the platform assistance, and then it kind of all happens for you automatically. And we're going to show you that. Now I'm going to do a file new FireMonkey application, and we'll just save the changes to that little demo app that I'd done. And this FireMonkey application, let's change this to the different designer here, and I am just going to put down let's just put down a button and an edit. Let's just type these in. I want an edit over here, and then I want a button and a list box. So just a standard, the standard application that you probably saw a billion times demoed inside of Delphi 1 if you're around during this time. And I would see in this line of code, I'd see that it'd be list box 1.items .add, and I'd be able to add edit 1.text. And if I run this application, it's going to appear on my second monitor, so I'll drag it in, and I now have a real quick little FireMonkey app. But as we know, FireMonkey applications can be run on a Mac, and I'm running here on a Windows 7 machine, but I have a Mac Mini right here that's present. I have that available here and via VNC. We're just going to look at it real quick. I have installed something called the Platform Assistant. If you go under Program Files, Embarcadero, and go to the Rad Studio directory, under there's going to be a Platform Assistance. And there will be two files. There's going to be here, let's actually just browse to it real quick so everybody can see it. Program Files, Embarcadero, Rad Studio 9.0, and we have PA Server right here. There are two files that are important here. We have the PA Server.exe. This allows us to set up this Platform Assistant server on Windows and various things. So I could say set it up on a remote Windows box that I wanted to use this with, or I could also the zip file is for the Mac. So all we have to do is transfer that over to our Mac and unzip it in the PA server directory. I've created this command here because of it, and I just have to launch that command. Now that I have it, it's going to prompt me for a password, and I press enter because I'm not going to use a password right now. And I'm going to go back to my project. In here, I have only target platform is 32-bit, so I can add a platform and select the OS X. I can then right-click on it and say Edit Profile, and you'll see my Mac Mini that's listed here, and you'll see the IP address, and I had to add that, so you just hit the Add button to add a new one, but I'd already done it. The password's blank in this case. We can hit Test Connection, and it'll say, hey, it succeeded. So we just hit OK. Now I'm going to bring back in the Mac and quickly hit Run. And you'll see this, it stopped on deploying. So what right now is what it's doing is it's copying over the files to that other machine. And if I were, now it looks like we're debugging. I can actually put a breakpoint in here, and let's go back to VNC. You will see that here's this little application running, and I can type in a value and hit the button, and you'll notice we come right back to Delphi in there. So remote debugging now becomes much easier. So in the name of supporting the Mac, they've now supported something that in a new way that makes it really, really nice to get an application to the destination of where you need it to go. And although I have no purposes for Mac except for at home where I'm playing, at work I don't use one. But this technology is useful there. We have remote Windows 2008 servers that are running processes every single night, 300 different executables running at timed intervals. You know, it's kind of a complex process, and sometimes being able to debug on that machine is invaluable. Well, your environment's set up the way you want it on your desktop, and so it's even better to be able to just remote debug and go in and the platform assistance is improved that story significantly. So I can just hit Run on this and go back to the Mac project, and you can see that it is complete. Now I am going to end that project, and there. One of the things that we have here under the project menu is deployment. Sometimes we need to deploy additional things when we're going, and if you'll see here, there's the local path. I need to output the project X, and it's going to place them in certain directories on the remote machine and allow me to deal with that. I can also add additional files so that those always go out and get deployed when I'm dealing with this. And there is also a way to output feature files, so I can quickly check that I want certain drivers or certain things that are common with Delphi, such as the Midas library, to also go when I'm debugging. So that's a real cool and a nice way to get those files over every time we're trying to debug. Now let's talk a little bit about some other advanced features. Okay, now as we've gone back to the application, I'd like to show you a few more advanced features of the debugger, specifically some as they involve breakpoints. In the breakpoints, there's some properties here, and let's just explain what those mean and why you might use them. First off, you can break on the condition, which we have shown, or we can break on a specific thread ID or name. We can also put a pass count that says break as soon as we hit this number of times that we've gone past this breakpoint. We can have non-breakable breakpoints where we can do things, evaluate expressions or log messages. But another way you can do that is enable a group. A breakpoint can be assigned to a group. So I could say this breakpoint here is in my breakpoint group. Doing that allows me to set up breakpoints in common code and then disable them. And when I disable them, if we come in down here, you can just unclick. You'll see that they're no longer enabled. They're a gray, and this is, say, sitting in this getAge routine. I might have passed this getAge routine many times, but as I come over to the debug demo, I only really want to care about hitting that once here. So I could put in a breakpoint property here and turn off its break and just enable the my breakpoint group. So as it's coming through this code, once it hits this line, it will enable this breakpoint to then start being useful for us to see. This is really useful when you have to put breakpoints in really common code, but you don't want to see it every single time. We also have the ability to log the entire call stack or the partial call stack to the event log. And we have the ability to disable the group. Sometimes you have a bunch of code that has exceptions in it by design. You can set a breakpoint before those things and turn off the debugger stopping on all those exceptions. Let it handle it by default, just let your application handle like it normally, and then turn on and allow it to handle the subsequent exceptions. This is really useful for ignoring and stop, so that Delphi's not prompting you to stop multiple times, especially in code that has several of these by design. There are also some other tools that are useful. So if we come in and we need to get into a debug session here, so I'm just going to pick something here and hit populate. Hold on real quick. I'm going to I don't know what I had set up. Oh, I had a bunch. I was playing with the breakpoint properties before. So now I have a breakpoint. I have things that are objects that are being created, and you'll see that this emp. Well, I want to see emp, and I can put it on here, and I can kind of mouse through things, but ultimately I want to see this in a different way. If I hit Control F7, I can see Evaluate Modify, which gives me the ability to see things that are there. I could come in here and say evaluate emp.empf first name and evaluate that and see that it comes up as Marco. And I can actually change that to Bob, and I can modify that in the evaluate modify window. So now the first name of this object is Bob instead of Marco Smith. It's now Bob Smith. I can also hit, let's evaluate, it's better to hit an object here. Let's hit the inspect window. This brings up the debug inspector. It's really useful when you're seeing an object because now you can see all the data, all the fields that are there. I can come in and see properties, so I can come in and see the age, and I can click on this question mark and get the result. I could deal with all the, we can see what's available very quickly. And so the debug inspector is a quick way to see what's available for a given object. There are other things. If you do multi-threaded programming, you can see each individual thread and what one are you currently stopped and executing in. So this breakpoint is in this specific thread right here. If I by chance had a named thread, when I do file new thread and there's an option for a name, it will show up that name right here if we use that. So if you can name your threads, it will show up in the debugger for you. And this is kind of a quick, short overview of what you could do in the debugger. Right now, we're going to kind of open it up for questions, and hopefully we've covered something that you haven't seen before. And even if we have, we may be giving you a new idea on what's there. I want to thank you for your time.